Okay, well, before I get too distracted,
before they go sue us for money we never get.
So, we go declare bankruptcy now in that case.
Yeah, so chapter 47, chapter 11.
We don't even need to declare. We're bankrupt already.
So, tackle this recording non-start. I guess the question, right, is like, how do we even want to tackle the subsidy issue? Because we probably want to set a little bit of a background context, I guess. I don't know if Emeka, I know you've been under pressure today, but the pressure will only get worse.
The pressure is getting worse. Hey, the guys are giving up, and the ladies are whipping.
Let me give you the floor, actually. Do you want to set a bit of the context for the conversation about the subsidy? Basically, where are we at, as far as you see it, in that contemporary debate about the subsidy? And then, I think that will give us the grounds to assess, what we should expect from the elite in the coming period, and then how the left should respond.
Oh my. Okay. Now this one, they pain me. So if you detect a strain of anger, because I know as this one, they bite me. So,
the table's on turn now.
I guess that I have to say that I haven't been very big on subsidy.
Sure.
To even to start with. Not in 2012, and not now. But a lot has happened to how I think about it in that time frame, in the space between 2012 protests and now. So I think that the one way to approach how I see it is that if the argument in 2012, I might be missing it, but I think that part of the argument was that subsidy itself was a scam. I don't know when that began to gain, traction. But I'll go a bit further and say that even protests around subsidy too, a scam. I'm not sure you guys will agree, but much more than subsidy itself being a scam, the protest against subsidy. So I think that it's more in line. It's more how those protests have been scams generally that leads us to where we are today, where the question is no longer about resisting subsidy removal. It's about how to go about it, how to live, life with that new reality, Part of the reason why that is that the guys who are removing subsidies today are the guys who came into power because of the idea that subsidy needed to be removed. So, which is a bit of an irony, because the same guys who said no, that is a scam, especially the Buhari guy, said there was a scam. The scam spent that money. He ends up spending maybe even double what he was calling a scam. In the 8 years that he's being there. Not to preempt the conversation about subsidy that we would have with a guest of ours about fossil fuels and what how the left needs to be careful. I'm not even exactly sure that I'm on the same page with that argument, the argument that she puts forward. But
I guess should we at least have our guests come first before we start disagreeing with them? Well, anyway, sorry, continue.
But for me, I think that what's a bit I'm a bit pissed about this whole thing, especially because the guys who said it wasn't subsidy shouldn't have been removed in 2012, but now the ones who have come about removing it, even though it initially was gradual, but now it's not just that they yanked it off. They yanked it off without a plan. I think that's what's most infuriating. You don't even have a plan, and then you just come on the day of your inauguration, and the next thing you thought to say was subsidy tilo. Subsidy is gone. I mean, you and there's no plan. And the 1 month buffer that we were supposed to have, at least to dialogue, to talk, to think about how to implement the removal, you just threw it to the wind. And then 2 months after, how many weeks after, you still don't know how you want to go about interventions, palliatives. I'm not even just talking about one of the demands that Labour is making, which is for an increase in wages. It's about how you transition, because part of the argument as it stands today is that the removal of subsidy might be an opening for Nigeria to transition to cleaner, energy, to clean energy, to cleaner energy by way of gas, But really, nobody is talking about, it seems like that plan is not even there to start with, or it's there, but they don't even know how to go about it. So, I don't know if I've answered your question, but I think that where we are now is I mean, I think we're even more confused as a people, as a nation, than we were, in 2012 about, how to go about subsidy, the removal conversations around it, and that's why, I mean, if you're paying attention to conversation around subsidy within the left, it is about reverting back to the subsidy, and like, to be honest, that's gone.
I think you've raised a lot of good questions, or at least like provided some framework from which we can have a wider conversation. I guess, as you were laying that context, you were saying that part of the issue is that, Tinubu announced the removal of the subsidy without having discussed or provided any alternatives. But, it seems to me like some people argue, maybe they have a point, that the issue was not even the alternatives. The issue is the question of whether the subsidy should have been removed in the first place. Because, even if you call it a scam, is it the entire thing that's a scam? I mean, and particularly if Nigeria itself in a lot of ways is built on a lot of scams, then why is it the one that implicates the lives of and livelihoods of the majority that we want to touch first? So, I mean, maybe that's where to start the conversation in the onset, because you suggested that you're not even necessarily, you're torn on the question of whether the subsidy, was worthwhile in the first place. So I guess let me pose that question back to you folks. I mean, do you feel that the subsidy had a place, in society, or do you feel that it was only a matter of time before it was removed or should be removed? And then the real question is about what should replace it. What do you think, Oechi?
I think that in the first place, how did we get ourselves to a sort of regime or era where we needed to be doing that when we get refineries and things we're supposed to work to prevent us from funneling money into things that don't make sense, in the first place? I'm talking about the petrol subsidy or the PMS, whatever subsidy. Like, how did we get there in the first place, But if you look at them, logically, it makes sense that some sort of elites will corner the money from that sector.
Because it was a subsidization. I mean, we should be clear that it was a subsidization of the importation of refined.
Of refined crude. So that one just makes it wild and crazy, but knowing these elites are waiting them be anyway. So now just avenue for much more money for them, So Nigerian government has not been the one to answer or cater to the needs of the people like that. So get any framework to respond to any need of the people. That COVID was very, very sure for. It was apparent for. We saw everything, like palliative, everything. So it doesn't have the mechanism of answering the needs of the people. So if anybody they feel say any kind of palliative they come, or these people get the methodology or history of answering or helping the people at times where they needed, then I think we're on a long thing as the
You have a boat to sell them in Sokoto.
Yeah, that kind of thing. So this country, the government is not one to respond to the people and help them. So when they yank these things off, the people should have be like, man, brace for impact, because nothing where they don't put in place could help, the people. They've not put anything in place. They don't have the ability to do it. They've not been known to do it. When Buhari said he was going to remove it, he just kept it a bit longer so that their party go fit enter. That's what I see as, because if everyone come out and like that, it means it will kill the possibility of looking at APC.
Well, he even said that. They even said now that his spokesman, after he left, said, look, I mean, because, there were some people who were praising Tinubu for having taken that action. A lot of people in the foreign financial markets, etc. And so the Buhari people were feeling a bit jealous. And they said, look, actually, we are the ones who started this process of removing the subsidy. We just couldn't complete the process before the election because we knew that we would lose if we did that. So they even have acknowledged that, the point you're making.
Yeah. Which is true.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Like, you can't materially make life hard for the people and think that they will embrace you when the next electoral cycle is here. So again, what is the policy of this country and the ruling elites towards the people? What's going to be your policy? Is it to make life miserable for us, or make sure that you work hand in hand with us, look at all the variables and see that you execute waiting, go make sure, say, we know go day under this kind of immense pressure? Because what this government doesn't understand is they're going to create a lot of socio-economic problems and a lot of cultural, a lot of cultural problems, that people will still need to face, because they are delegitimizing elite culture. People will start looking down more on them, and they'll be more they'll be more touchable, like, if I use that word, because to touch them now, to insult them, all these things, to see them as illegitimate is becoming easier and easier. Social media don't allow us to get more access. We see that you're increasing your own money. News is dropping and breaking as fast as it is. We can compare with other countries. So we know that you guys are just taking us for a ride. And, with time, they will hear from the people. It might not just be in ways that we might imagine, but they'll hear from the people, because you can't squeeze the people up that way and then think that there won't be some sort of blowback. It will come. It might not just be as organized or coherent or how we want it to be in our own leftist arrangement, but it will come somehow, some way.
I want to come back to the question of as our concluding question, how we assess the popular responses to the subsidy removal so far. But I think there's still some aspects of the question of the subsidy removal itself that it would be good to clarify. So we've set out that the process, there was a scam aspect built into the way the subsidy was operating, right? The fact that we were subsidizing, at least the government claimed to be subsidizing the importation of refined petroleum products rather than building its own capacity to refine petroleum products. So that itself was absurd. I mean, I think we are clear on that. Then at the same time, it's worth pointing out that the government was also actively supporting one private individual, Emeka's friend, to build his own refinery, in Lagos, at the same time as it was failing to actually improve the public refineries that would have guaranteed a lower price for petroleum products, which Nigerians have come to see as a sort of birthright. So I think, we acknowledge that, I think it's worth just clarifying that there were these contradictions and absurdities built into the existing subsidy regime. That being said, though, I mean, weren't there other ways to address these issues that wouldn't have led to immediate suffering for the poor? I mean, why do you? I mean, I just want to talk about the actual removal, of the subsidy. Like, why did we go down that route? Like, why has do you feel that Tinubu made that announcement on day one subsidy is gone, that you're talking about, Emeka.
Because the clown. He's a clown, honestly. I mean, Said OAG, the thing here is this, and this is what probably irks me the most about this bunch that call themselves APC. They've mastered the art of, it's not propaganda, it's the art of fibbing, the art of lying. And then I think they've come to the conclusion that if they tell a lie a lot of times, it will become true. So they don't, so in their books, they can't even separate the lie that they told themselves. And then,
but is this really an APC? Is this really an APC question? I mean, all the parties.
No.
The subsidy should be removed.
Let me, because I'm speaking more to narratives here, than the actual subsidy removal itself. In terms of, so even this, I think that this, if all the guys who were on the ballot came, they all agree. I think it's a red herring, really, to be honest. The question is, APC has decided to frame subsidy removal as, or subsidy itself as benefiting only the rich. In fact, they have gone as far as to say that they were subsidizing petrol for top government officials or people who had 5-10 jeeps, who drove in convoys. That's how they,
and also for neighboring African countries,
right? And also for neighboring, and so that's part of the argument. In fact, the one that they mouth the most is that our consumption has always been as a result of what do you call that thing?
Smuggling,
right? And this negates the actual life and debt issues that subsidy kind of tackled, right? So the question is, who are you telling that nonsense to? Are you telling it to people who are informed, or are you just saying it as almost like you're campaigning? The people who depend on subsidy every day, like me, the people who depend on subsidy every day that are worse off than me. Okay, subsidy goes to fueling generators, for a tailor, for a barber, okay, for small production, for so one of the components of subsidy removal is electricity. So we don't even have electricity, right? So there are people who power their houses with fuel, cheap fuel from subsidy.
I mean, anyone who can afford power.
That has been. So you then come and say, okay, since subsidy has been removed, Nigeria has gone from. So first of all, they claim they don't even know how much Nigeria consumes in terms of fuel on a PMS on a daily basis. But immediately subsidy goes, or immediately they say it goes, they then come and say subsidy, our consumption has come down from 65 million liters to about 40 million liters. So that's a drop in about 25 million. And they've now attributed the whole 25 million drop to smuggling. Whereas it could be possible, that the economy is contracting.
Yep. Of course.
All right. This then has direct impact on our gross domestic GDP, on our GDP, but even more so on inflation. So the cost of food prices are skyrocketing. So you saying that subsidy was only for the rich is around nonsense. I mean, it's not even something that should be mentioned in anywhere that people who have been through, who have had an education, are gathered. So it's the point that I'm trying to make about APC is not to say that if Labour, for instance, or PDP had come into power via the last election, that subsidy wouldn't have gone. Now, okay, OEG was making a point that they didn't have a plan. It's not entirely true. They did. It's the willpower to implement.
Well, I think this is their plan. I think that their plan was shock therapy. So I think to assume that they would have done it in a slow way, in any case, I mean, that PDP Labour, that they would have waited and done some consultation or whatever, I think is just people being a little naive, to be honest. I think that there's a lot of pressure for shock therapy that all the Nigerian elites agreed to.
Maybe,
so this is the plan. Is my
maybe
point.
maybe
I don't agree with you. We're speculating on that.
Maybe I should try to be a bit more specific. Like every other person will won't come out something will go benefit the masses. They always lay out one sort of bullshit or the other. Yeah, they get plan, but they no go do them. That's it. When I say they don't have a plan, of course everybody go bring out we are going to use CNG, but those bullshit. No, it's not going to happen. They don't have the capacity to implement anything. It's not a country. If you look at the history of Nigeria, they've never done something where go say pull the people back from suffering. Like they don't get that. It's not a country or they are a ruling elite that has that feature of doing that. That's what I meant exactly by saying they don't get plan. Yeah, everybody go put something for paper. Say when we do this, we remove it.
I agree with you entirely there, OAG, as well. I think that, but I would even take it one step further. That it's not so much that they announce a plan and they can't execute it, is that the plan they announce is nonsense. I mean, the plan they really want to execute is shock therapy. This is what's happened here. I mean, they've been building up to this.
But before we go that far, what was the plan that was announced?
They go say they go change to this one, change energy, cleaner buses, give like one something 100 bus. This one. That
they will review the minimum wage. They will also, they will also bring incentives for small businesses. All of them
stimulate business. They go share something. Should be the guy read them. He still read it for the new address. When you address, what I'm read out.
I'm saying is that if they have fundamentally committed to themselves to more deeply privatize the petroleum sector, which I think they have, to shift the balance of investment in the petroleum sector from public sector, be it the refineries or CNG or any of the other aspects of this, to shift that to the profit-generating sector, then that's what they're going to focus on first. And they're going to focus on how to deliver that in such a way that they will minimize counter pressure from the public, in such a way that they will gain the confidence of investors. And I think that the way to do that was shock therapy. So in that sense, it has worked, quote unquote, because it has shifted a lot of it's generated a lot of energy and interest from the investor side of the equation. It has shifted a lot of public debate to, okay, how do we manage it rather than how do we resist it? So it worked. I mean, this is the plan, is what I'm saying, right? And so, I think that saying, okay, it's a question of implementation or, I think maybe slightly obscures the class character, to put it frankly.
I don't agree with you guys. There was no plan. I mean, not to say there was no plan. How they executed it, it wasn't planned for. So you guys are ascribing some kind of wizardry to these guys.
No, but shock therapy is not something that they invented, or it's like.
I'm saying they didn't even. So what we're witnessed since that announcement on May 29th is they're just anything that they can grab. You go out ahead and make a declaration that you can't back in any way. And then you're now looking for ways to. So what we're witnessing, even all this dialogue with Labour, is a way to try and manage the situation. So what they've been doing since is managing the situation. There was no, when you see the plan.
See, I mean, the thing is that Emeka, when you say this stuff, you think that they actually kind of care about. I mean, that's what's confusing about coming at it from that angle. Suggests that they want to manage people's suffering. I mean, the situation they're managing is they're trying to redirect that public anger away.
On this one, they care.
Okay, that's interesting.
Of course,
that's interesting. So because I think their primary concern is self-preservation, not anybody's. Not your gen. You can afford to power your gen. Yeah. I don't think they care that much about.
No, I'm not saying that. That's but why do you, of course that's not. Yeah, of course that's not what they care about. They care about how the public responds to it. They also care about how opinions, right? So these people are, in fact, all the managing that you see them managing is to shape public opinion. They had it in their favor immediately. It was announced. All right. They knew that the NLC going in on a strike was going to swing the opinions away from them. They stepped, they waded in and made it seem as though they are having conversations with the NLC. But we found out, a few days ago when the NLC went for their one-day protest, that not even the issues of even wage review there's no committee for it. Yep. Right? So these guys are managing a situation that we had no business being in the first place.
Okay. So where you and I differ is that I think that from the point of view of the interests of the Nigerian ruling class, these guys are doing a fucking fabulous job. That's where you and I disagree. That you think that, I think you seem to be highlighting a kind of incompetence, where I think that the situation is being expertly managed because they continue to diffuse any public pressure. They continue to redirect attention from the question of where should any austerity measures actually start to palliatives, which is a totally nonsensical concept in the first place, right? And it seems to me like they're doing an excellent job of kind of shifting public opinion away from, wait, what the hell? Why are they removing this thing? To all sorts of other directions, including this kind of zombie demand for palliatives, or a question about minimum wage, where they will talk about it on one hand, but actually make absolutely no action to implement it on the other hand. I'm conscious of time, and we should probably
honeymoon period. But let's go ahead. I don't think the experts at nothing.
I want to briefly reflect before we close this chapter on that question of public opinion, right? And how the public has responded, including the working class and labor unions, and also the left. We don't have a huge amount of time. So, in just a couple of minutes, how have you guys assessed the public's response to the removal of the subsidy so far? Has it shocked you? Is it more or less what you expected in terms particularly of how the labor unions have responded? Is this new or does this seem fairly classic?
Well, I think it's classic anyway, because again, waiting the supposed organizations, waiting them don't do in trying times. What has been their legacy? Right. Now to just redirect people into nonsensical, aperture, where we say, go lead to any kind of political, fundamental political pressure. We're just there doing protests, come back, they don't give us few extra cobbles, and then we are okay. There's no real political shift from any kind of thing, where these people come up with. And that's even highlighted with the 1 day protest, or I don't even know, if the protest happen with a meeting, whatever we then do, where Labour don't sharply come back, say they okay with taking the talk with the government, so this thing, there needs to be an alternative political movement or organization that carries people along on a different pathway, so that whatever we get is going to be like a standing point to effect much deeper political changes. So this is classical from 2012 organized this thing to Occupy, to the failure of NSAS, to this is like the same route, but different branches. I'm saying. Yeah.
America?
Well, I don't know. I don't even know that I believe in Labour to fight this, because in terms of what the Labour can achieve in terms of the impact, not only for the formerly employed, and the large swath of people who actually need this sorted out happen to be in the informal sector, which Labour, for all their strength, doesn't quite cater to. But I also understand that Labour is in a situation, organized Labour, as it were today, is in a situation that they probably haven't ever been in. And that situation stems from the fact that, going into the elections, they actually pitched their tent with one of the political parties. All right. So one of the first things that this government did was to go to court to stop them going on strike. The first time, they broached this, which kind of forced their hands into dialoguing and negotiating. All right. What we witnessed a few days ago is Labour saying, hold on, we're negotiating with you guys. We don't know what but you're going ahead to the public where you're trying to shape public opinion and saying that you saved 1 trillion naira or you're done. And this is not information that you have even passed down to us, right? So, of course, they then go on strike because it's now between government and the organized labor. It's like almost like a battle of wits, and it's also a battle for public opinion. So, what's the point? Labor is going on a strike if the generality of Nigerians aren't in support of them. Then it's almost as if it's wasted effort. So that kind of balancing is there, and then that I don't want to use the word electorate, but the public, it's a polarization. So there you have a sizable chunk of people who are saying, we would have to weather the storm, give it a few months, give it this, give it that. There are plans in the pipeline. And
I think particularly middle class people and upper middle class people.
And then Labour is saying, but you see, the truth of the matter that reading of public opinion is one that you get from social media, right? Because if you're on the streets, you would hear people actually, you would know that, this is something OAG said, it's only a matter of time, something will give. So that's why I started that by saying, I don't believe in Labour. Nobody's going to wait for Labour. Nigeria showed it during answers. Nigerians showed it during answers that there will be no need to wait for Labour. So I'm not one of the people who, what I get from Labour is, all Labour can do, maybe is if they go on a general strike, will be to force these guys to actually sit down and do the work that they have decided that they wouldn't do, right? Otherwise, they will hear from the streets. And it would not, I'm going out on a limb, I'm saying, you're not going to reach the end of this year because it is biting. So they can tell all this damn trash about subsidy being only for the rich to the dogs. It's not for the people on the streets, who have, had to pay twice what they would normally pay for transportation costs. And then they're still talking about just doubling the minimum wage or doubling wages for civil servants, because all these guys really are interested in, and that's why they're having this conversation with Labour. It's about formal employment that doesn't ground to a halt, their own sources of revenue, right? Because they're not even interested in the people who, when the time comes, would go into the streets. So I think that's my own take of, what the response to this has been. They might be fooled by what they listen to on social media, but it's really hard out there. People are not smiling.
Well, see, on that conversation about the streets and labor and the relationship between the streets and labor is probably where we're going to spend the most of our time in our upcoming discussion with Camilla Howland, who spends a lot of her time thinking about Nigerian unions and how they intervene in moments of social crisis. So I think we've done a decent job here of just laying out a bit of the political economy context of the subsidy removal and the social responses to it in the contemporary period. But then I think we should have, in the course of that upcoming conversation, a moment to reflect more deeply on the history of the subsidy and how we got where we are, and also the history of the popular response to the subsidy, and how we got, and how that has gotten to where it is currently. So, I think we should probably pause for now, unless there are any final responses or remarks. And then,
so that when our experts come, go fit come and break them down. Bro.
Excellent. Yeah, cool. So I think that works.
Yeah.
All right.
Once again,
so nice chatting, man. You just gotta start doing that. I'm sure there's some people who really hate that sound.
I like that. Our voice just enter, fade out, fade in, fade out.
It's not bad. We don't try. Yeah.
Yeah, we can.